So hello and welcome to you, Ben Woelk. It's really, really good to see you here today on today's Midday Mentors. We met at the Society for Technical Communication Summit earlier on this year, and you entered into the APMG stand and we got talking there. You are one of our fantastic certified professional technical communicator trainers, and you teach at the Rochester Institute of Technology in the US. So can I hand over and get you to introduce yourself further, please?
Of course. Thank you, Estelle. Yeah, it was absolute pleasure getting to meet you at the STC Summit conference. It is funny, as we talked about with COVID-19, there are some opportunities because you would not have been at that conference. So we would not have had a chance to meet. So that is one of those funny good things that came out of it. Yeah, I work at the Rochester Institute of Technology, which is in upstate New York, which means it looks absolutely nothing like New York City. It's all rolling hills and farmlands and lakes and beautiful area, except in the winter where we get lots of snow. But I work at the Rochester Institute of Technology. I'm actually a cybersecurity practitioner. I'm working in the information security office, but my training really was as a technical communicator. And what I've found that I was able to bring that technical communicator skill set into my work as a cybersecurity practitioner. And I also teach technical writing and editing for the university.
Well, that's really interesting, Ben. Thanks very much. Is a cybersecurity professional your typical person that takes certified professional technical communicator?
It's interesting because it is not. Certification was developed by the Society for Technical Communication and partnered with APMG International to offer the exam and handle the certification pieces. The certification was developed by the Society for Technical Communication and is administered by APMG International. They partner with STC to do this. They offer the exam and they administer the certificates. So you can check the APMG website and get more information about signing up for the exam. Now it's interesting because you asked me about, is it typical for a cybersecurity practitioner to get a certification in technical communication? It is not typical. However, I've found being in cybersecurity, dealing with very technical content, needing to communicate to multiple audience levels and in a way that's they understand it, not in a way that's dumbing it down, but in a way that's appropriate for that audience, that a technical communication skill set and background has been invaluable. So even though even though I am a cybersecurity practitioner, I still see my base skill set as coming from technical communication. Been very active in Society for Technical Communication and I am now a past president of the Society for Technical Communication. So I worked on the governance side quite a bit as well. It's interesting though, because when I looked at becoming a trainer for the CPTC exam, I looked at a couple of different opportunities. One of them was this cybersecurity field, like I've mentioned, because I know how much people in that field need a skill set like technical communication, and they don't always have it. Many of them come up from very technical backgrounds, and they often struggle with the fact that they're having to communicate what they're doing to a different audience level than themselves. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to become an approved trainer for the CPTC. However, the main reason I wanted to do it is because at the Rochester Institute of Technology, we're really invested in our students. And I know a lot of universities will say that, but RIT has a great placement rate with graduates in different fields. And what I thought would be a really strong thing for our graduating students would be for them to be able to have a certification that they could actually graduate with, which would help differentiate themselves in the marketplace against all of these people who have a degree but they don't have a certification. So one of my key reasons for really doing this was to work with students at RIT, offer them training in terms of prepping for the exam and helping them get a better start in the marketplace.
Do you only teach students at RIT during these classes?
The training, we actually offer it to anyone worldwide. We're doing it now, given COVID, it drove us all towards learning to do things virtually rather than in person. But right now, we're offering it as an 8-week, 1.5 hours per week online synchronous Zoom class. So we actually meet as a classroom. We have participation and discussion, which is great because it's not exciting to just speak into a void of names that are just sitting there on the screen. But it's been a great experience so far. We have a number of practitioners in the class. They are talking about their work. People are learning from each other. So we're in this situation where we're not only helping them prepare for the exam itself, but we're all learning from each other more about how they practice or how we practice technical communication. So we currently have a cohort of 24 students going through the CPTC exam prep. We will be offering another class in this fall, and depending on enrollment, we'll offer another one in the spring. It's great because I'm not a great fan of trying to basically cram all of the material into a day and a half and then take the exam. So I work with my students to prepare for the exam, help them schedule the exam, but I don't try to have them take it the last day of class. And I think that gives them more time to understand the material better.
So, what would you say is the typical job role of the person that looks to take CPTC then, Ben? So, obviously outside of your students, and that seems like a brilliant piece of advice to enhance their CV and their skills. What kind of people do you find taking the certification that aren't your students?
So it's been really interesting because we have a real cross section of different people. We have people who are still in college at other universities working on, I think one of them is working on a Master of Fine Arts in creative writing. We have another person who was an elementary school teacher who wants to switch into technical communication. I have a practitioner who works with the government on Environmental Protection Agency cleanup sites and information on how to do that. We have people who are doing software documentation. We have people who are writing up instructions on doing hardware. It's really the gamut. One of the interesting things about technical communication is it's not just software documentation or hardware documentation. You have people who develop courseware. You have people who support cybersecurity as a practice. And that's not what I would normally think of being as a technical communication role. You have people in multiple fields. I think most of who I have in this current cohort are people who are either practitioners or want to become practitioners in the field.
And you went in a little bit into the role there, but what would you say if someone said, what does a technical communicator do? What's their role?
Well, the easiest, shortest way to say it is we explain things. But what we typically do is we take complex information, which is to some degree technical, and we figure out how to package that information appropriately. I use the word contextualize in terms of using the right terminology, making sure it's appropriate for the audience, making sure it's relevant for the audience. Mm-hmm. And the typical role is that you provide information so that the recipient, the person reading the information, however it's presented, a lot of it's video now, so it's really changed over the years, but you present the information in a way that the individual can complete whatever tasks it is that they need to do. So on the very basic end, we write instructions on how people do things. On what the field really looks like, we're creating presentations, we're creating online learning, we're creating chatbots, we are creating video learning, we are doing adult education, we may be doing physical items like pamphlets or signs or something like that. And of course, we do software documentation and hardware documentation, which I think is where the field has its roots.
So it sounds like there are a lot of crossover skills for in the marketing department. Actually, I could see it being very useful.
And I meant to mention marketing because one of the things over the last probably 5, 6, 7 years is there's been a lot more attention paid to how technical communication and marketing really need to align and be talking to each other. Technical communication was traditionally writers working with engineers. And the engineers could be absolutely brilliant at what they do, but they weren't brilliant at being able to explain that to, I usually say normal person. It's a horrible way to put it, but they're not usually able to explain it to a non-technical person who doesn't have the same background that they do. What they found is, of course, marketing people we have an increasingly technical environment, and these are technical products, and it's really been helpful for technical communicators and marketing communicators to talk to each other and better understand the product from the marketing person's side, but also for the technical communicator side, understanding more about who their customers are and what that customer profile looks like so that they can better address it and also provide the materials that marketing needs.
Okay, so I can definitely see some benefits to learning that. So thank you for sharing that, Ben. Who else would want to study this then? We've had marketing, we've had cybersecurity. Is that everybody that's going to benefit from technical communication, Ben, or are there more?
I think there are certainly more people and more specific groups. One of the issues that I had when I became a technical communicator with that title was that I had come out of a total liberal arts background. I was actually working on a doctorate in history of all things and started doing technical writing. And I didn't have anything that proved that, hey, you can do technical writing, you can do technical communication. So I pursued a university level certification around Advanced Certificate in Technical Information Design is what it was. But that gave me credentials. And I felt like, for me especially, that I felt like I needed those credentials both in the marketplace, but also to prove to myself that I knew my stuff. I knew what I needed to do to be able to be successful in that field. And I've done the same thing in the cybersecurity field where I've pursued certification there as well, because again, that's a field that very much looks for these letters after your name in terms of certifications, and that helps your credibility. So what I've found to be, I think, a great group to do the CPTC exam is people who are changing careers, who are coming from different backgrounds or coming into technical communication for the first time. Many of them are really not sure whether they know what they need to do to be a successful technical communicator. So they're coming in with a lot of doubt often that I'm suited for the field. And so what I've found in both the exam and even in the exam prep class I'm doing is that it actually bolsters people's confidence when they understand that they can master these 9 core competencies of technical communication, show on a test that they've mastered them, and then be able to go into the marketplace saying, hey, look, I've put professional development education into this field. I have a certification proving that I know the foundations of this field. And I know for me, having that piece of paper essentially does a lot for my confidence in terms of going out in the marketplace and feeling like not only that I know what I'm doing, but that other people would believe I know what I'm doing. So I find it I think it's a very important certification for people who are transitioning into technical communication from other fields. And there are many, many people who do that. I have a student in this class right now who actually has a doctorate in English. She's taking it because she wants to be sure she understands how what she studied relates to technical communication. Again, I mentioned we have practitioners. We have an elementary school teacher. We have a master's student. We have an RIT student who just discovered technical communication back in the spring when I spoke to their class about opportunities. And now she's pursuing getting her certification before she graduates next May.
Wow. And something that's a little bit surprising, well, certainly to me about you, Ben, given, as I say, that you came onto the stand and we were chatting away, you're a self-professed introvert. So you do this great podcast, Hope for the Introvert, and I've listened to a lot of the episodes and they are fantastic. And you went through on one of those episodes why you felt so passionate about certification, which obviously was very interesting, particularly to me. So I'd love it if you could share some of that with the audience, please.
Sure, and thank you for referencing the podcast. What I do on the podcast is meet with regular people, introverts in the marketplace, in the workplace, and talk about the challenges they face and how they've overcome them. And it's been some fantastic conversations. Estelle, you mentioned this specific episode of the podcast, and I interviewed a woman named Tara Hughes. And this was at a cybersecurity conference, and Tara did a presentation on imposter syndrome. And the room was packed, and these are cybersecurity professionals. And she set it up in a really, really interesting way. She put, how they had these Menti and these other different ways that you can put content up and have people interact in the audience on their smartphones and things. Well, she put a series of 4 questions up. And we thought we were answering those questions, but what she did was put a fake set of responses up, and they did not jibe with what most of us thought. That's not right. How many people say that this is that's not right? And then she revealed that it had all been, an elaborate ploy to engage us and help us understand how imposter syndrome affected us as cybersecurity practitioners.
Really, really bring your empathy out so that you sat there in the audience worried about your knowledge, thinking that you were so confident with your answer, and then understanding that actually you might not be, was what she was trying to achieve.
Yeah, and it was an amazing thing because, again, you have people who there's a fear of admitting what they don't know a lot of the time. And by the end of the session, there were people who were literally in tears at the end of it, just in a good sense, because it had broken through and spoken to them, and they understood that so many of us have imposter syndrome to some degree, that we just don't think we belong. How could we be doing this job? But it was a phenomenal podcast, phenomenal conversation with Tara. But what happened with it, we started talking about certifications and the role of certifications. And what I found for myself, now some of you, or many of you, will probably be familiar with the story The Wizard of Oz by Frank Baum. And there are 4 major characters in The Wizard of Oz, and one of them is the Scarecrow. And the Scarecrow is by far the smartest person in the party. He's probably a genius, but he doesn't think he has a brain. And it isn't until you get to the end of the journey to the Emerald City and Wicked Witch is dead and all of that sort of stuff, but then he gets his diploma, which is proof to him that he had a brain, that he had knowledge. And I've found for myself that often when I'm seeking these certifications, it's because I need that tangible evidence that I know what I'm doing. Having that certification, that diploma that the Scarecrow received in The Wizard of Oz, is a really important thing for people with imposter syndrome. I know for myself that I know full well I know all of these things and I know how to do this work, but I also have my doubt. I also have self-doubts about it. And being able to point to a certificate, for an example, Certified Professional Technical Communicator, is something tangible that I can say, yes, I achieved that, I can do that, and I can do that because I achieved that in some ways, but nobody asked me for it. But for me, it was really a self-confidence booster.
And it's a great thing to add to your CV as well, with that digital badge that goes out on social media too. So Thank you for that story, Ben, because I think that will hit home with a lot of people. It certainly did with me. It's that, that supporting that self-belief. Ben, thanks so much for sharing so much with us. We've packed an awful lot into a little interview here. Really, really appreciate your time, your experience, your thoughts, and the vulnerability that you have, which is really endearing on both on this talk and in your podcast. I know we're very lucky, and you've agreed to write a blog for us, which we'll be sharing on APMG International in the very near future. And if anybody wants to find out more about CPTC certification, you can also look at APMG International. But I assume that you don't mind at all if people can contact you directly on LinkedIn, Ben, if
No,
they want to discuss this any further.
no, absolutely, and it's easy. It's Ben Woelk on LinkedIn. And I'd also say if you want more information on the introverted leadership piece, you can visit benwoelk.com, spelled the same way, and you'll be able to find those materials there as well.
We'll put a link to that on the page and in the blog as well, Ben, so people will definitely be able to find you. Thank you so very, very much for your time. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you, Estelle. I've enjoyed the time as well.